Let's get the Trump administration perspective tonight on the latest polls, the Bolton book, other topics. Kellyanne Conway is counselor to the president. Kellyanne, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Brett.
I want to start out with this book. The administration has been fighting to prevent it from being released, going to court over it. John Bolton is now out doing interviews. He'll be, as I mentioned, on Special Report next week. He is saying, and it's in the book, that the president, from what he saw in the room, is unfit for office. What do you say to that?
Well, a couple things. When people do tell-all books, I'd prefer that they tell us all what they accomplished in those positions. So I've known John for a long time, served alongside of him in the White House for all 17 months he was there. And much of this national security accomplishments that happened, and there are many in the Donald Trump presidency, happened before he got there or after he left. The capture of al-Baghdadi, Soleimani, sanctioning the ICC, getting the Afghan troop withdrawal down to almost a half, and with the target, I talked to our national security administrator today, or director today, Ambassador Robert O'Brien, said we'll probably get to zero by May of 2021. So many of these things have happened since he's gone. And I like when people tell us all that they accomplished. I also would point out, and others have done this, that Ambassador Bolton, John Bolton, had many nice things to say about the president complimentary, but I think the one that's most important to some of the allegations in his book is what he said in the White House briefing room. He said, quote, since January 2017, President Trump has taken decisive action against election meddling and interference. In his book, he claims that the president is asking President Xi to help him win farmers in the Midwest. This makes no sense. I personally have had private meetings with John Bolton where we've discussed Chinese fentanyl, for example, since I run the drug crisis at the White House. And he never said to me, gee, Kellyanne, we have a problem with getting the Chinese fentanyl analog scheduled as President Xi has promised, because after all, President Trump is asking to help in the election. So some of this smacks people as brand new information and false as well. I know you're interviewing him next week, and I would just remind you that, and everybody who's watching, that Bolton aside, these books are never fact-checked. So you interviewed James Comey in December of 2019 or 2018, and he lied to you. He lied to you, and you called him on it. And it was revealed that he lied to you. He didn't know. He said he doesn't know that the Democrats funded the Steele dossier. You said, what do you mean you don't know it? He said, I still don't know it as a fact. The Republicans did. You said, no. You correctly said, no, they didn't. And it turned out when we saw the FISA warrants that on or about October 12th, 2016, he had been briefed about that. And then he included that unverified dossier, which is a French word for a load of bunk, in the briefing to both President Obama and President Trump.
You're saying that in this book there are lies and that his perception is not accurate. But yet,
well, his
and
perception
Bloomberg
is
points
new
this
for
out,
somebody who
Eli Lake says Bolton himself is a legendary note-taker who keeps a detailed record of his life. One of his former staffers told me, this is Eli Lake, that Bolton takes notes on what he had for breakfast. Also, if Bolton's book is all lies, why would the White House try to block its publication and claim he is revealing classified information? Bolton's account of the Trump presidency is important.
I didn't say that.
Because it's devastating. It's devastating.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, there's a little delay, Brett. I didn't mean to interrupt. So, no, I didn't say it was all lies. What I said was it's important to put it all in the perspective of the tenure that he had there, what has happened since he left, and the fact that he didn't raise any of this in a meaningful way while he was there. And I will tell you that those of us who do work there are duty-bound. We took an oath to the Constitution. We work for the country. We are duty-bound to give advice and try to brief the president and work with other members of the cabinet, of the senior staff, the outside world, Congress certainly, on any number of issues to try to improve this country. That's what we're trying to do there. So I know he's a note taker. I witnessed it firsthand. And all I'm saying is I think we need context here that Ambassador Bolton is somebody who was crediting the president not just for being decisive around the globe on many different actions. In fact, he's on tape saying that many times. But the one that really caught my eye today when I went back through some of it was him in the White House press briefing room saying that for the entire presidency of Donald Trump, President Trump has taken, quote, decisive action against election meddling and interference. And does anybody believe that the president asked President Xi to help him win the election. It's so ridiculous. In fact, Ambassador Lighthizer was asked it with no warning yesterday by Senator Menendez in a hearing about other issues, and Ambassador Lighthizer was under oath and immediately spontaneously said, never happened, I was there.
And we played that soundbite.
So Ambassador Lighthizer is saying, this is in the room where it didn't happen. So I think, look, there are a lot of books out there that turn out to have tremendous falsities. I don't know why these books aren't fact-checked. Even names are wrong, dates are wrong. Sometimes quotes are attributed to somebody positively and somebody else said it, they weren't even there. So I'm glad you'll have a chance to interview him. I think that's important. I think the Department of Justice has made clear it's unusual to release a book like this while people that you worked with are still doing their jobs and while the president is still in office. That's the unusual part.
Well, other people have done it. We had former Secretary Bob Gates, who wrote a book about the Obama administration while he was still in office. Other people have done it, but you're right, to be this pointed and this direct, there are a lot of things that are getting picked up. I want to quickly, I only have a few seconds. Is this rally happening in Tulsa? 100%. It's not going to be moved outside. It's definitely going to happen.
The information I have from the campaign is that it's happening, and I think people want to get out there and express their beliefs peaceably. You've seen people do it through protests, through peaceful protests and otherwise, and you're going to see people, whether it's in Tulsa or elsewise, Brett, they want to participate in our great democracy also. I also would say that Oklahoma, I believe, is in phase 3. And so you can have gatherings of a certain number indoors. And I know that people are adhering to the protocols, but we can't pick and choose who can be where, wearing a mask or not, based on our politics, based on whether some people think that folks are irredeemable and deplorable. They have the same rights as anybody else to peacefully assemble under our Constitution. And I think it's important that they do that. Also, I know you were talking a lot about the polls, since I was a pollster for many years.
Yeah.
Respectfully, we never did one single national poll when I was campaign manager of Trump-Pence 2016. Why? They're a colossal waste of time and money. Statewide polls are really the gold standard. David Plouffe, another successful campaign manager for President Obama, backed me up on that yesterday and said these are like 50 different governor's races state by state. Let's look at those statewide polls. And I think the polls in the states right now are about where I would expect them to be, depending on the poll, with Trump and Biden both under 50% in most of those statewide polls and within a few points of each other. I saw that in 2016, the day Donald Trump asked me to become the campaign manager in August, and we saw they were both under 50. They were within a couple points of each other. And then you go into those state by state. We know President Trump and Vice President Pence are going to spend more time out in those swing states than Joe Biden ever can. And they will be connecting directly, talking about the progress report of the Trump administration and laying out the vision for the next 4 years.
Well, that's definitely a national poll out tonight, but we do swing state polls and battleground state polls as well. Kellyanne, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brett.